Hello. Have my Diet Ale 8, not sponsored, but thirsty. So, good afternoon. Welcome to Nerd Herd. This is our fourth installment of Nerd Herd this month. And as you know, we have been reading The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas. And this week I read the last 30% of the book. And so let's discuss. What do you think? So let's see. In this last 30%, we start like at 8 weeks after the event, and we go to 10 weeks after, and so yes, a couple of things happen. One is that Star and Haley have a confrontation, and all of the stuff that's been brewing finally hits the fan, as it were, and goes places. Haley basically says that she thinks she's right, and Star does not. And at one point, Haley says something that's really triggering for Star, and so Star actually hits her in the face. And then fighting ensues, and other people get involved, including Star's brother, Seven. So that's one thing that happens. And it reminds me of microaggressions a little bit. And if you're not familiar with the concept, it's small things that you see in everyday life that are not like blatant racism, but are racist anyway, in more covert kinds of ways. So, an example of this would be, wow, you jump really high for a white person, right? And that's a little, I'm trying to be clear in my example, of the, trying to make it clear. But, in some ways it's not always clear that that's happening. So one of the things that Haley says is that Khalil would have gotten killed anyway because he was a drug dealer, and she said some other really troubling things. And so, yeah, I mean, does being a drug dealer mean that you deserve to die? I would argue no. I think human life is more important than that, you know? So, Star gets really offended, and rightfully so, and fighting ensues. So that's one big thing that happens, and Haley, I feel like this is Haley really showing her true colors, you know? So, that's rough. The other big thing that happened, and this is kind of like, you know, what all of this has been leading up to, and that is the grand jury's decision on whether to indict the officer who shot Khalil or not. And the jury decided to not indict... Oh, spoiler alert! The jury decided not to indict the officer who killed Khalil. And because of this, there are riots that happen in Garden Heights because people are upset. They are rightfully upset because This isn't a thing that just, it's not a one-off. It's not an accident. It's because people make assumptions based on people's race, and it's not okay. And trucks going by. And you know, I know I spoke in a previous session about implicit bias, and I feel like that's a really big part of this, because we all have implicit bias regarding a variety of topics. And the problem is that when you are in a position of power, then implicit bias can have deadly consequences, as we've seen. So, yeah. I fell off of my train of thought. So the riots happen, and Star 7, Chris, Devontae, and Kenya they decide to go to Star's dad's store to try to hold down the fort in case the rioters come over. And they end up intersecting with Just Us for Justice, the activist group that employs Star's attorney, and they decide to take part. And one of the things that Star is able to do through various people encouraging her is she speaks to the crowd using a bullhorn, and in that way she uses her voice as a weapon, which is what has been recommended that she do. Use her voice as a weapon to encourage change. And yeah. She also is recorded and broadcast on live TV, so her voice can be spread even further. It's eerie how similar The Hate U Give is to current events that are going on in the United States. It's like a terrible record that just keeps, a terrible broken record that is, that just keeps repeating itself. And something's got to change. So, one of the questions that I found on the internet has to do with Star pledging to never be silent, and that also asks, how can you use your voice to, encourage change? So, I'm really interested in this concept of being anti-racist, and from the book Stamped, I learned that to be anti-racist is not just to sit by the side and not do anything. Those who are silent are equally as guilty as the ones who did the thing. But it is an attempt to point out things that are not okay in a way to address them as they happen. And I feel like racism nowadays there are macro ways that it comes out, but also micro ways. No, not to be confused with microwaves, like those microaggressions that I was telling you about. And so I personally am just trying to stay aware of what I am consuming and the resources that I come into contact with. I can give a quick example. Recently, I was made aware of an ebook that was created to help kids understand coronavirus and, what it is, why it's dangerous, what we can do to be safe and protect ourselves. And as I was watching this book, it's an ebook, but they also made like a video that has the illustrations and someone narrating the words with the illustrations. And the illustration part I noticed because all of the characters in it were white. They were heteronormative, meaning everyone had a mom and a dad, or a grandma and a grandpa. And they were all able-bodied. There was no disability represented. So it was very one track, right? And the message that sends is it's important for white kids to wash your hands and be safe. But no one else is reflected in that. And no one else can see themselves in that. So it may not resonate as well with other people. So I made a point to call that out to the people who were able to hear me and let people know that I'm listening and that's not okay. That we need to be more inclusive in our resources that we share with people as librarians. And the person who shared it originally worked and is currently working to find more resources that are more inclusive, that cover the same topic, so that when kids see these kinds of resources, they know that their perspective is valued. They will be able to see themselves and relate and find meaning in matters because they can see themselves, right? So that's what I'm doing to use my voice. What are you doing? How are you being anti-racist? How are you using your voice to lift others? I'd really like to know. So that's really all I have for today. I will come back again next week for our final July Nerd Herd get-together. And in August, I will be taking the month off from Nerd Herd. And we will start back in September with something new. Some new thing for Nerd Herd. So, in the meantime, wash your hands, wear your mask, be a good human, and we'll see you around. Alright, y'all, take care.